Hello, my name is Gary, and I was raised in the Western United States, so I'm a native English speaker. I hope that you will enjoy this YouTube channel. Thank you for joining us.
Around the World in 80 Days by Jules Verne. Chapter 1. Phileas Fogg and Passepartout become master and servant. Mr. Phileas Fogg lived in 1872 at number 7 Savile Row, Burlington Gardens, the same house where Sheridan died in 1814. He was one of the most prominent members of the Reform Club, though he always seemed to avoid drawing attention to himself. While Phileas Fogg was definitely English, it was less clear if he was from London. He was never seen at the stock exchange, the bank, or in the city's business areas. He didn't own any ships that docked in London. He had never spoken in any of the courts, like Chancery or Queen's Bench. He wasn't a manufacturer, merchant, or farmer. His name wasn't known in scientific or academic circles, and he didn't participate in any London clubs or societies, whether they were about science, arts, or even eliminating pests. Phileas Fogg was a member of the Reform Club, and that was about it. Joining this exclusive club was simple for him. The Barings, his bankers, recommended him. His checks were always paid promptly from his well-funded account. Was Phileas Fogg rich? Definitely. But even those who knew him well couldn't figure out how he made his fortune, and he was the last person to ask about it. He wasn't extravagant, but he wasn't stingy either. Whenever he knew money was needed for a good cause, he would quietly contribute, sometimes anonymously. In short, he was very private. Had he traveled? It seemed likely because he appeared to know the world very well. There was no place so remote that he didn't seem familiar with it. He often corrected the club members' guesses about mysterious or lost travelers with just a few clear words, accurately predicting what was likely to happen. It was almost as if he had a special gift for seeing the future, since his predictions often came true. He must have traveled everywhere, at least in his imagination. One thing was clear. Phileas Fogg had not been away from London for many years. People who knew him well said that no one could recall ever seeing him anywhere else. His main activities were reading the newspaper and playing whist. He often won at whist, which suited his quiet nature. However, his winnings never went into his own pocket. Instead, they were set aside for charity. Mr. Fogg played not to win, but simply for the enjoyment of the game. Phileas Fogg was known to have neither a wife nor children, which is common enough, but he also had no close relatives or friends, which is quite unusual. He lived alone in his house on Savile Row, where no one ever visited him. He had only one servant. He ate all his meals at the club, and at the same time every day, in the same room, at the same table, never dining with other members or bringing guests. He returned home precisely at midnight and went straight to bed. If living this way means being unusual, then there is certainly something good about being unusual. The house on Savile Row wasn't luxurious, but it was very comfortable. Phileas Fogg's habits didn't require much from his one servant, but he expected him to be almost impossibly punctual and precise. On this very 2nd of October, he had fired James Forrester because the young man had brought shaving water at 84 degrees Fahrenheit instead of 86. Now he was waiting for his replacement, who was supposed to arrive between 11 and 1:30. Phileas Fogg sat upright in his armchair, his feet together like a soldier on parade, his hands on his knees and his back straight. He was intently watching a complex clock that showed the hours, minutes, seconds, days, months, and years. At exactly 11:30, as was his daily routine, Mr. Fogg would leave Savile Row and head to the Reform Club. At that moment, there was a knock on the door of a cozy room where Phileas Fogg was sitting, and James Forrester, the recently fired servant, appeared. "The new servant," said Phileas Fogg. A young man around 30 stepped forward and bowed. "You're French, I believe," Phileas Fogg said, "and your name is John." "It's Jean," the man replied, "Jean Passepartout. I've had this name because I've always changed jobs. I'm honest, but I've done many different things. I've been a traveling singer, a circus performer, a gymnastics teacher, and a firefighter in Paris, where I helped with big fires. I left France 5 years ago and wanted a more stable life, so I started working as a valet in England. When that didn't work out, and hearing that Monsieur Phileas Fogg is known for being very precise and reliable, I came to work for you hoping for a peaceful life and to leave the name Passepartout behind. Passepartout suits me, said Mr. Frog. You've come highly recommended and I've heard good things about you. Do you know my requirements? Yes, sir. Good. What time is it? It's 22 minutes past 11, Passepartout replied, pulling a large silver watch from his pocket. You're too slow, Mr. Fogg said. I'm sorry, sir, but it's impossible. You're 4 minutes too slow. No matter, it's enough to note the mistake. From this moment, 29 minutes past 11 a.m. this Wednesday, October 2nd, you're in my service. Phileas Fogg stood up, took his hat in his left hand, placed it on his head automatically, and left without a word.
Passepartout heard the street door close once. It was his new master leaving. He heard it close again. It was his predecessor, James Forster, departing. Passepartout was left alone in the house on Saville Road. Chapter 2. Passepartout thinks he has finally found his perfect job. Wow, muttered Passepartout, feeling a bit flustered. I've seen wax figures at Madame Tussaud's more lively than my new boss. The wax figures at Madame Tussaud's are popular in London. They look almost human but can't talk. During his short meeting with Mr. Fogg, Passepartout carefully observed him. Mr. Fogg looked to be around 40 years old, with handsome features and tall, well-built body. He had a light hair and whiskers, a smooth and unwrinkled forehead, a rather pale face, and perfect teeth. His expression had what experts call calm inaction, a quality in those who act more than they talk. In his daily life, he seemed perfectly balanced and as precise as a high-quality clock. He was so precise that he was never in a hurry, always prepared and economical with his movements. He never took an extra step and always chose the shortest route to his destination. He made no unnecessary gestures and was never seen to be flustered or agitated. He was the most deliberate person in the world, yet always arrived exactly on time. He lived alone and kept to himself, avoiding social interactions. Knowing that friction slows things down, he made sure never to conflict with anyone. Passepartout was a true Parisian. Since leaving France for England to work on as a valet, he had been searching in vain for an employer he could truly respect. He was an honest guy with a friendly face, slightly pouty lips, and a gentle, helpful manner. His eyes were blue, his complexion rosy, his body sturdy and muscular from his younger days' exercises. His brown hair was a bit messy, as he only knew one way to style it, 3 quick strokes with a wide-toothed comb. It was hard to say how Passepartout's energetic personality would fit with Mr. Fogg's strict routines. Only time would show if Passepartout could meet Mr. Fogg's need for order. Passepartout had led a restless life before and now wanted stability, but he hadn't found it yet, even after working in 10 different English homes. His past employers were always unpredictable, often out on adventures. His last boss, Lord Longferry, a member of Parliament, often ended up in trouble after nights out and sometimes had to be carried home by the police. Passepartout tried to address this issue politely, but was met with resistance, so he left. When he heard Mr. Phileas Fogg was hiring and lived a very regular life, never traveling or staying out, Passepartout thought this job might be just what he needed. He applied, and, as you've seen, he got the job. At 11:30, Passepartout found himself alone in the house on Saville Road. He immediately started inspecting it, checking from the cellar to the attic. He was pleased with the clean, well-organized, and quiet house. When Passepartout reached the 2nd floor, he quickly identified the room he would be staying in and was happy with it. The room had electric bells and speaking tubes to communicate with the lower floors.
and on the mantel was an electric clock that was exactly like the one in Mr. Fogg's bedroom, both ticking in perfect sync. "That's good. That'll do," Passepartout said to himself. He then noticed a card hanging above the clock. After taking a closer look, he saw it was a schedule of the daily routine for the house. It listed everything the servant needed to do, starting from 8 a.m., when Phileas Fogg got up, until 11:30 a.m., when he left for the Reform Club. The schedule included specific tasks like tea and toast at 8:23 a.m., shaving water at 9:37 a.m., and getting ready at 9:40 a.m. It also outlined what needed to be done from 11:30 a.m. until midnight, when the punctual Mr. Fogg went to bed. Mr. Fogg's wardrobe was neatly organized and stylish. Each pair of trousers, coat, and vest was numbered to show when they should be worn, and the same system applied to his shoes. The house on Savile Road was chaotic under the famous but disorganized Sheridan, was now a model of coziness, comfort, and order. There was no study or books, which would have been useless to Mr. Fogg, as he had access to 2 libraries at the Reform Club, one for general reading and one for law and politics. His bedroom had a safe designed to resist both fire and burglary, but Passepartout found no weapons or hunting gear, indicating a calm and peaceful lifestyle. After examining the house thoroughly, Passepartout smiled broadly and said happily, "This is exactly what I wanted. Mr. Fogg and I are going to get along great. What a domestic and orderly gentleman. A real machine. Well, I don't mind serving a machine."